When you're an indestructible 18-year-old or 10 feet tall and bulletproof, as Col Mackereth described himself, the last place you picture yourself living is in a nursing home. This, though, was quickly becoming reality for Col after he dived into a river and was left quadriplegic. Without many options, back in 1978, Col's future looked bleak. Col, however, surprised everyone by not only regaining his independence, but living a full, happy and successful life, despite the chair, which became part of him. In his memoir, Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow, Col shares his story of hope and courage in dire circumstances. I hope you enjoy Col's story as much as I did. Col, thank you so much for joining me. I have been so excited to chat with you, as you know, in amongst the messages I've been sending, and I have your amazing book here. Okay. Yeah, and I honestly, I couldn't put it down, and I said to someone, it was raining here on Saturday, and I was really pleased because I just sat here and finished the whole thing off, much to my husband's dismay. He always says goodbye to me when I get myself into a good book, but thank you. So I'm really excited to hear some things that you have to say. But Col, firstly, when you dived into that river, did you have much of a memory of what happened that day? Because a lot of trauma people, or people who have been involved in traumas like that, say they don't remember anything of that day.
It's a long time ago now, so that's contributed to my memory a little bit. But I've got a pretty good memory of the day. I was severely hungover when we went out to the river, so it was just one of those crazy things, a place that I'd been to hundreds of times before, literally hundreds of times before, and knew it so well, and for some reason dived in that day. I must have passed out because I can't remember going from being in the water to being on the bank. But I remember, and the first line in the book is where I must have come back to consciousness, with my friend doing mouth to mouth to resuscitate me. So, but yeah, I've got a pretty good memory of that part. After that, I think shock might have set in and things got a little bit hazy.
You were very lucky, that you didn't drown, because your friends thought you were messing around, didn't they?
Yep. Well, to the point where I needed resuscitation. And to this day, I'm not sure whether my friend actually did resuscitate me or was about to, and I regained consciousness. But, we haven't really spoken about it.
And Col, the start of the book where you're explaining, those first few weeks and years as a quadriplegic, it's quite confronting and it's explicit. Like, you don't leave anything to the imagination, which I think is a really great thing for us, to gain an understanding of just exactly what it's like. So could you just explain briefly what those first few weeks were like and how you came to terms with your life being confined to a wheelchair?
The first couple of weeks I was that bombed up on pethidine or whatever the painkillers were. I was experiencing really weird hallucinations and all sorts of stuff. So the first couple of weeks weren't like reality. They were just, this most horrible nightmare. But after that, I spent the first 11 weeks in head traction. So I had metal tongs into my skull and a weight on the end of them, keeping my fracture stabilised. So I had all that time to get my head around where I was and what had happened and what the future might look like. So, in my job now where I support people in the spinal unit through that period, it's so different because nowadays, with modern surgeries, people that have a fracture of their neck have a surgery in the first week and they're put in a wheelchair, straight away, and it's all, oh, crap. Can you say crap? I just did.
That's fine, you can say that.
But it's so confronting now, whereas I think in the old days it was a lot less confronting because I had that time to come to terms with my situation. And, it's a horrendous thing to happen. It just, and most people will have a preconceived idea about what it's like to be paralysed. I know I did, and I write a little bit about that in the book.
Yeah.
And I thought that my life would be over if ever anything like that happened to me. But like a lot of things, once you're in the situation yourself, your mindset changes. And I think most people who have gone through some kind of adversity or trauma, get a different mindset once they're in the situation.
I guess you don't have a choice, do you? You either have to sink or swim. And
not really, yeah. And look, some people sink. I know there were people that went through the spinal unit with me that just dropped their bundle and they literally went home and died. I kind of related a bit like to having the bone pointed at them, like they just got in their head that it was over. One guy in particular became quite good friends with mum and dad while they were down there, and they were devastated when they heard that. And it was only about 6 months after he went home that he, just went.
There's, what you were saying before about how you had time to, I guess, internalise what was happening to you, because you go from, having your hopes and dreams as an able-bodied person to suddenly that must seem, I just can't imagine.
It's hideous. It is hideous knowing what your future's going to look like, or you think you do when you're 18, to have all that just gone in an instant. And I guess that's the work that we do in the spinal unit, is to try and help people replace their pictures of what their life's going to look like in the future. So, and that's sort of a lot of the reason why I wrote the book as well, is to help people along that journey, to look at my life and what I've done over the last 40 years, because they're amazed when they say, I tell people that I drive a car and they say, oh, really? You can drive a car? So, yeah, that's how I get to work. I said, oh, you work? I said, well, school fees don't pay themselves. So, oh, you've got kids. You must have had them before you had your injury. I said, well, no. Oh, when you were married before you had your accident. I said, well, not to my current wife. Well, I wasn't married to anyone. But and they're amazed that people can, and I'm not special in that regard. Like, lots of people are doing awesome things after their injury. So
just getting back to because you do a lot of work with within the spinal unit at the PA hospital in Brisbane. So what is there a percentage? Are the percentages higher seeing men compared to women in there? And what age? Like, is there an average age that you that come up in there? Or
look, it's changing as the demographics are changing with older people. There seems to be more older people coming into the unit now, but it's mostly teenage to early 20s males, and usually the result of a car crash or a motorbike crash. That makes up probably 40% of the people in there. And then there's a high percentage of like falls and people falling off roofs or out of trees or that sort of stuff. And sporting injuries, of course. and water-related like mine. There's probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 divers every year that come through the spinal unit that have dived or been dumped by a wave.
And on average, how long do those people spend in the spinal ward?
Yeah, it'll very much depend on their level of injury and what other injuries they have. But these days, someone with an injury similar to mine, which is quadriplegia, 6 to 9 months in the spinal unit. Someone with paraplegia, considerably less, maybe 3 months. People with really high injuries that are sort of dependent on ventilators and that sort of thing could be up to 2 years in hospital. So it's a long time.
Oh, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Col, I hope you don't mind, but I want to ask you about when you left hospital, and you did go off the rails a little bit with your drinking and drug taking.
Just a little bit.
So do you think, would you have gone down that path of the drugs and the drinking if you hadn't been confined to the chair, do you think? Or
probably. Most of what I was doing that's because my mates were doing that.
Okay.
So it wasn't, look, I guess a little bit, but it was what everyone was doing in the day. And the times before random breath tests and those sort of things. So you got in your car and you drove around, and looking back, it was pretty irresponsible. I think I would have.
And I mean, you still maintained in that time, you still maintained your independence, and I'm astounded that you were able to drive a car, that you are even now so independent, and you're able to drive and live such a great life. So how did you teach yourself to do all those things?
Look, I had that drive to be independent, and again, I guess it was a bit of sort of peer pressure that all my friends were leaving home, and in those days you didn't stay and live with your mum when you were 35 like kids do now. Everyone was as keen to leave home as soon as they could. And I guess, I just couldn't see myself staying at home and being dependent. Just had to figure out you've got to think outside the square. It's very frustrating sometimes when such a simple task can be so difficult, especially when you don't have any use of your fingers and your hands. And I used to get really frustrated trying to do something as simple as driving a nail into a piece of wood, or I'd do some of my own maintenance on my wheelchairs and stuff, and I'd get in the shed and I'd put the job on the bench, and I'd line up all the tools I had that were the size I needed, and I'd drop one and I'd say shit, and I'd get the next one and I'd drop it and I'd say something else, and I'd drop them all eventually, and then I'd go and pick them all up and line them all up again and start again. So, I think one of the biggest things I had to overcome was that frustration, that things that were so simple prior, something as simple as cutting up your dinner. And I know when I first went home from hospital, Mum wanted to do all that. She said, let me get you a drink of water, love. I said, no, Mum, I can get my own drink of water. But that's what mums do.
I imagine you have attained a great deal of patience over the last 42 years, Col.
Well, you have to, otherwise, and probably in more recent times I've even developed more patience and more understanding of how anger works and those negative emotions, that there's no point getting angry or getting frustrated because it just doesn't help you in the end. So that's one of the things that I've picked up, that don't get angry, just figure another way out to do it, because you just get stuck in that anger or that frustration. And I used to get stuck in it. And I used to throw things, and then you have to go and pick it up. So, don't throw it in the first place.
I'm interested to ask you, there's a part in the book where you're driving over to a girl's house, Sky,
Yeah.
to get drugs and maybe something else you wanted to.
Well, that was the intention. That was the
Yeah.
plan.
But you had epiphany on the way over there.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
It's hard to explain, really. It was certainly a voice, but not an audible voice, if you know what I mean. Like it was a voice that I heard in my head that just said, "What are you doing? No, this is not what you should be doing." And it scared me. It really did. To the point where I went home and I packed up all my stuff and I did run back to mum and dad's place to be safe and to figure out what I was going to do from that point.
So was that the end of the drug taking from that day on?
Pretty much. It was the end of any thoughts of taking hard drugs. I mean, I still smoked a bit of pot and drank booze, but that didn't last long either after that. I think I was very lucky in that I did have mum and dad's place to fall back on, and they'd done some modifications to the house to set up so that I always had that there if ever I did get in trouble. But yeah, it was a scary time. Certainly.
I pick up through the book that you are quite intuitive because you speak of things right throughout the book. But that was just one I really wanted to ask you. So, Col, you've actually been married 3 times, but it was your second wife that you went down the track of having children. Yeah. And the first round of IVF was heartbreaking because it took so long, and then you fell pregnant with twin girls.
We fell pregnant with the girls on the 4th IVF cycle. So we had 3 unsuccessful cycles before we got a pregnancy, And that's a roller coaster in itself. That's a huge roller coaster. Yeah. And anyone who's gone down the fertility path will know exactly how much of a roller coaster it is, and the effect that the drugs that my wife was on, it's like, ooh, it was relatively easy for me, and for the male, you don't have to do much at all. Just go into the little room with the books, and that's pretty much all you have to do. But and I really felt for her at the time. I was like, wow, she's really, really going through a lot to have a child.
And then you did all that, and then you lost Kate and Veronica. Yeah. How many weeks pregnant were they?
They were just over 24 weeks. So, again, anyone who's been through the neonatal clinic will understand that roller coaster as well. And being in that ward with the other parents and all the other babies that were in the same sort of situation, it's tough because you want hope and you want to hold on to, you want to believe that your child is going to survive, but then all the statistics and all the advice is telling you that the chances are very slim. And neither of us wanted to hear that, even though we were told right at the beginning that, the chances of these girls surviving was very low. I think you block that out because you just don't want to hear it.
Col, later in the book you talk about how you came to terms, or you were talking about what everyone comes into this world to learn a lesson, and you said to your current wife Vicky, well, what did Kate and Veronica learn? What was Vicky's answer to you?
Well, it was I'm kind of new to that way of thinking as well, that, you're here to learn lessons on this journey, and then you come back if you don't learn them And yeah, just one day I said to her, well, what could they have possibly learnt in such a short time? Veronica only lived 3 days and Kate was just less than 3 weeks. And I said, what possible lesson could they have learnt? And Vicky said, maybe it wasn't their lesson. And, that made a penny drop as well. I thought, okay, so we're here for our lesson, but we're here for other people's lessons as well. And that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me as well. And it made it a lot easier for me to deal with the fact that, I'd lost my baby girls in that way. And I kind of think, well, yes, they had a purpose in life and they achieved some things, and they did. They brought a family together and they brought a community together when they passed. It was incredible to see the people that were at the funerals and they'd never even met them, yet they were all there together.
And I can see and read about the depth of strength that they brought to you. But Col, in all that, the devastation of losing them, you decided to go back and try again. And I just can only imagine how daunting that was for you. You must have for you both, you must have been on eggshells. And then you had your 2 beautiful boys, Joseph and Benjamin.
Look, we were, and I think we went in with the mindset that, well, it can't get worse than what we've already experienced. It can only be better than that. Like, there can be nothing worse than having a child and lose them. Although there were times when I wanted to choke the boys.
We all have those moments as parents, Col. That's nothing new.
It's weird because lots of my friends were having children around the same time, and I'd watch their parenting skills, and some of them, the kids were quite feral, and I can remember thinking, you need to parent those kids. You've got to be the parent, and it wasn't until my kids were born that I realised that way of parenting doesn't suit every child, because Ben and Joe were poles apart in their looks, but also their personalities. So what worked with Joe didn't work with Ben. And I thought, okay, I need to change. I was judging people. I was judging parents thinking, pull that kid into line, don't let him. But it doesn't work with all kids. That was a huge learning curve.
Yeah, it's easy to sit back when you don't have children.
It is. Yeah.
You're the greatest parent. Col, I want to talk to you about the peer program within the PA, because fast forward a number of years and you've met your soulmate, Vicky, and you're back in Brisbane and you started working with spinal patients at the PA with the peer program.
I started working there when I was still living up in North Queensland, and I was actually flying down to the Princess Alexandra Hospital to support the people from North Queensland that were in the spinal unit, and then I'd actually go and visit them. I was driving based in Townsville, but driving down to Mackay or up to Cairns or out to the Isa to visit people when they came home from the spinal unit. And then the position was, we moved down to Brisbane and spent a lot more time in the spinal unit. And I think the amount of support that you need is much more pressing when you first have your injury, to have that support while you're in the spinal unit. So I've been doing that now for 15 years. And it's a roller coaster as well. Just seeing 90 people a year going through that whole, upheaval. And it's not just the person with the injury whose life's turned upside down. It's their family and their friends and their work colleagues. It affects everyone.
Col, you speak of Katie, a young girl that you said you met and she filled a void in your life. And it wasn't lost on me that her name is Katie and one of your daughters was Kate. But what happened to Katie?
Not long after we moved down to Brisbane, Katie's dad passed, was a result of suicide. And, I think Katie needed somebody to get that support that she wasn't getting from her father anymore. And that experience for me changed my thoughts on suicide as well. Up until that point, I'd thought that suicide was a selfish act, but it wasn't until I experienced what Katie went through with her dad to come to understand that, it's like a mental illness that affects you, that takes you to that level of desperation that you'll take your own life. And I filled a bit of a void in Katie's life, and I kind of looked at her as the daughter that I didn't have. And we have a great relationship still.
I think the right people come along in your life at the right time to help you through what you need to. So you have come into Katie's life at the right time by the sounds of it. Col, I want to ask you about the 8 keys, and I need to mention here the Pacific Institute, because when I read about the Pacific Institute in the book, I was really excited, and I messaged you straight away and said that I had gone through Lou Tice's program, and gosh, he is a remarkable man to have done, he and his wife, to have done and developed what they did and have the insight to change people's thought patterns and to know that that's there within us. So can you fill us in a bit about your take on the Pacific Institute and what Lou taught, and how your 8 keys developed from that?
Most people don't know that the effect that your thoughts have on your everyday life, and I was the same. And through work, we did a course from the Pacific Institute, and it opened my eyes up to so many different keys, I guess, that is what I'm calling them now, that affect the way you think and the way you act. And most of us are just oblivious to it. We just think, that's just how life is, until you can get an understanding of them. And I wanted to include that in my book to try and help people, primarily people that are going through the trauma of having something like a spinal injury. But there are one size fits all. Like, most people that have read my book have said to me, I love the keys, and I'm going to go back and read them again and use different parts of it in my own life. And I guess that was a bit of a motivation to write the book as well, because I wanted to share those keys with as many people as I could. But they're all fundamental principles that most of us probably know, and it's not until you actually see it written down or associate a name to it and you go, I knew that. I do that, or, that'll work.
One thing that I really got out of your book was when, it's easy to see our mind as just our mind, but you talk in there, you speak of and write about seeing parts of your mind as different managers, and if the manager isn't performing, then you just sack that manager and get another one. And I thought that is really just hits home, and it's not easy, but it's it just makes a lot of sense. I thought. Col, what are the 8 keys?
The 8 keys that I've put together from what I've learnt from Lou Tice and the Pacific Institute and my own life experience. The first one is identity, and that's around your behaviour matches who you identify with. And I use the story about when I was a smoker and I identified as a smoker. yet I was trying to give up smoking, which is a fundamental thing that a smoker does. So you can't actually stop doing something that you identify with. So no matter how hard you try, it's not until you change your identity that you can change your behaviour. That's the first one. The second one is what I call thought power, and that's really just understanding that the reality that's going on around you is what you interpret it, not what's actually going on. So you have you make an interpretation of what you see and what you smell and what you hear around you. And I relate it a bit to commercial media, or the commercial news, 7 or 9 news. They give you the version of the news biased to whoever's owning the company, I guess. You get their version of the news. It's a bit like someone said there's always 3 versions of a story: mine, yours, and what actually happened. And I think that's, for all of us, our world around us, we don't see reality. We see what we interpret as reality. And once you understand that, then you can kind of work on making the changes you need to make. The third one is about visualization. And this is really important with the people that I work with in the spinal unit, because we've all got a vision of the future. And then when that vision's gone, it's really hard to move forward. But, visualization relates to goal setting. And I always say that, goal setting is, it's visionary. You set the goal first, and then you go about making that reality. And that's how everything works. It starts in your mind as a vision, or it could be as simple as, I'm hungry, I'm going to have a sandwich for lunch. And then you actually go and you make the sandwich. So you make your thought become the reality. So that's the visualization part. The next one is belief. And that's really important, because unless you believe you can make that happen, it'll never happen. And I've actually just started another course with the Pacific Institute this week, and we're going over a lot of those things. And we just talked yesterday about how that belief affects what you do, and it affects your potential. If you don't believe you're capable of something, then you just can't do it.
Yeah.
The next one is equally as important, and that's self-worth. And it's so important in everything. If you don't feel that you're worthy of the things that you want, then you won't get them either. And it's so important. And you don't know you're doing it. And that's one of the problems as well. Like, you subconsciously push things away that you don't believe you're worthy of. And I don't think I know anyone whose self-esteem is at a high enough level or a level where it should be. I just think most people tend to think less of themselves than they do of other people. And until you get in the mindset that, yes, I am worthy of that, then those things will come to you. The next one is comfort zones. And we all have our comfort zones, and a lot of us can get stuck in them. And I think comfort zone is probably the worst description of what it actually is, because a lot of times it's not a comfortable place. And we're stuck in it because of fear, mostly. And the way I talk about getting out of your comfort zone is to visualize what things look like when they're fixed. and take yourself in your mind before you go. Otherwise, you're going to find a way to go back to your comfort zone. If you throw yourself out of your comfort zone, all of a sudden your subconscious is going, hey, I'm not supposed to be out here, and it'll find a way or an excuse why you shouldn't go on that diet. Oh, I've just bought a new packet of Tim Tams, so I can't start that diet today. And then, I've got one packet, I may as well get another packet. And before you know it, you're sitting back in your lounge chair eating Tim Tams and not exercising. So it's very important. And the next one is one that I think ties most of the keys together, and that's your self-talk. And it's your self-talk that creates your identity. It's your self-talk that creates your self-worth, your belief, your visions. It's pretty much the key to everything. And you just have to watch how you talk to yourself. And I think, one of the things I say to people, when you talk to yourself, sometimes you say the wrong things. And I think, if you had a friend that talked to you the way you talk to yourself, they wouldn't be your friend for very long, because we really punish ourselves. We really, we know every stupid thing we've ever done. And we keep reminding ourselves of it. And it's like, well, we need to think about the good things and think about the positive stuff and tell ourselves, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can do this. Yes, you're worthy. And there's a way of doing that too, and using the affirmation process to help you. But your self-talk, and Vicky and I pick each other up on our self-talk all the time when we say things that are not taking us towards our future. We'll say, is that what you meant to say? So, oh, no, I meant to say, yes, I am going to write a best-selling book, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And the last one is about ownership. And this is all about coercion. It's got to be your idea. The whole wanting to create change, you've got to do it because it's your idea, not because it's someone else's idea. Not because your wife says, oh, I think you need to lose a few pounds. It's because I want to lose a few pounds. And I don't know about you, but if someone else suggests something to me, it's like, yeah, it's not going to happen. It's like, And one of the things I used to talk about was when I was married to my second wife, my brother-in-law would come around to my house and he'd say, oh, you should do this. You should put a pool in, or you should do that. And I think, you should piss off and worry about your yard and let me worry about mine. So, it's not going to happen. It may have been a great idea, but because it wasn't mine, I was like, yeah, well, I'm not doing that. Unless you agree with it, unless you give it sanction, and then it becomes your idea, and then it's a good idea. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Okay. In the book, you write about when your dad would come out and you'd ask him to do things, and you'd have to, you twigged a little bit later and tried to make it his, or made sure that it was his idea.
Yeah. I think women are better at that than men. I think women are quite skilled at making the husband think that it was his idea to mow the lawn or take the rubbish bin out or whatever.
We have a lot of practice because that's the only way we can get anything done.
Right. I would ask Dad to help me with things on the farm, and he would always do it, but he would carry on like it was like, oh, the worst thing ever, until I figured out how to get him to come up with the idea of, and just little suggestive things like, oh, there's a lot of weeds coming up in the paddock. And he'd say, oh, yeah, you have to pull them out. I said, yeah, I know. And he'd turn up the next day at daylight and he'd be down in the paddock pulling out weeds because it was his idea. Yeah. It's the same with yourself. Like, you can try and talk yourself into doing something, and you have that fight going on in your head with your conscience, with the one person saying, oh, I'm gonna start an exercise program and start eating healthy. and the other person on the other side's going, you know you're not. You know you're going to get the packet of Tim Tams. So that's where that self-talk comes in, that you've got to listen to the right person.
Col, I found it interesting when you talk about your smoking, how you changed your mindset and went from being a person who smoked, trying to give up smoking, to seeing yourself as a non-smoker, and you virtually gave up overnight, didn't you?
Yep.
And I was chatting with Shanna Wan from Sober in the Country a few weeks ago, and she said a very similar thing, and she described it as a miracle that she was a full-blown alcoholic, and overnight she became a non-alcoholic. So
it happened in here, and then it happened outside. Yeah.
The other thing I just wanted to bring up, and you were talking about your dad, and he always used to say to you, why did you dive into the so-and-so Fletcher? And you suddenly one day thought, I was supposed to dive in that day. And I honestly believe that too, the courage and the tenacity and strength that you have shown throughout your life, and what you're passing on to so many other people is incredible, Col.
Thank you.
Anyone, not that I've met a lot of people that know you, but the ones that do know you all say what a top bloke you are. So, you must feel really, you must be a really nice man, I think.
I like to think I am. Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to get too carried away.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask you, and you might not want to do it, but you said you were talking about your self-talk and making yourself feel good, and you said in the book every morning you look in the mirror and do your best Joey Tribbiani. So I'm wondering if you could do that.
I do. And my wife goes, oh, you're right. But look, you know what? If you're waiting for someone else to tell you how good you are, you're probably going to be waiting a long time. So, it's a do-it-yourself project. Start by telling yourself and believe it.
Yeah.
Like I used to do it before, but I didn't believe it because I had that other little person going, yeah, no, you're not. No, you're not. But now I believe it. And I think, you know what? Yeah, damn straight. And I do. I look in the mirror. How you doing? It seems really weird, but like I said in the book, try not to let anyone else see you doing it.
Joey's pretty cool though, so
he's extremely cool.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
But, we're so used to not giving ourselves a pat on the back, and I think that's especially people from like rural parts of Australia. You just get on with it, and you're not looking for accolades. You just do the job that's needed, and you get on. And but yeah, a lot of times it's an advantage, or it helps to just stand back and look at what you've done and go, you know what, I've done a bloody good job there. That was good work, and I did well, and make yourself feel good about it. And you go, yeah, I'm bloody good at this. And that's what I do with my speaking now. Like I've only pretty much just started to do some of the speaking jobs, but I tell myself all the time, I say, you're a bloody good speaker. And I believe it. So
yeah, exactly. And I guess when you do believe that, you are, because your vision matches what you're actually doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Col, yesterday, today, tomorrow,
yes.
Where can people buy this book from?
People can buy it direct from me, and just email me col@8keys.com.au, or they can get it in a Kindle version on Amazon. If they live in Charters Towers, they can buy it from the bookshop there. But look, it's on most of the online places like Booktopia and those sort of online places.
As well.
But if you want a signed copy, you can email me and we'll get you a signed copy.
Okay. Now, you're speaking and you do team building workshops as well. So how do people reach out to you to book those?
I have a website, 8keys.com.au, or people can get in touch with me on Facebook, or I'm on all those social media things now. LinkedIn and Facebook mainly, but yeah, you can contact me there, or you can email.
Thank you, Col. I just know you would be making such a big difference in so many people's lives, and not just people who have been through the trauma similar or a trauma similar to yours, but people from all walks of life. So I might even try to get myself along to one of your workshops one day. That would be fantastic.
You know, Kelly, it's interesting, and people say to me sometimes, "Oh, I couldn't do what you do. I wouldn't be able to cope." And you know what you do? You find a way to cope. And people say, "Oh, you're inspirational." I say, "But so are you. Everyone's inspirational. I'm inspired by what you do." From where you do it, it's like you're right out in the middle of the sticks, and yet you've got this awesome podcast that's going everywhere. So.
Oh, thank you, Col, so much for joining me.
Yeah, it's been great.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching our video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please try to remember to just click on the subscribe button so we can keep you updated with everything that's happening. Thank you.